Namaskaram everyone. We are Mandlin siblings. I am Mandlin Samhita Shivram and this is my brother Mandlin Shreya Shivram. We thank Giri Bhakti for giving us this opportunity for playing today on this auspicious day of Ramanavami. We have Silambarasan uncle on Tavil and Hariharan uncle on Ghatam. We will be starting this concert with Atatala Varnam in Ragam Bhairavi. Hope you all enjoy. The next song is Giriraja Sudha in Ragam Bangla, Aditam. The next song is Banturiti Kolu in Ragam Hamsanandi Aditalam. Song is Tulasi Dala in Raga Maya Malavagaula, Rupakatalam. Now we will be moving on to our main song. That will be Bhavanuta in Ragam Mohanam Aditalam. song is Prema Mudita Manase Kaho Eka Ramanam. The next song is Chandrasekhara.
Oh Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurur Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sada Shiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmad Acharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Ramaya Ramabhadraya, Ramachandraya Vedase, Raghunataya Nataya, Sitayam Pataye Namaha. Namostu Ramaya Salakshmanaya, Devyai cha tasyai Janakatmajayai, Namostu Rudrendra Yamanilebhyaha, Namostu Chandrarka Marudganebhyaha. Good evening, Namaskaram. I would like to welcome you all to this discourse on Vishnu Sahasranamam, meaning with explanation. At the outset, I would like to thank Giri Fine Arts for providing me with this wonderful opportunity to talk about the divine names of Lord Vishnu on this auspicious opportunity. So today, we will begin with a gentle introduction to Vishnu Sahasranamam and its unique origins. We will then touch upon the importance of Nama Sankirtanam in Kali Yuga. We will then go into some of the verses in Vishnu Sahasranamam and look at the meaning and analyze it with some explanation. So let's get started. Vishnu Sahasranamam is actually the 1,000 divine names of Lord Vishnu, which was narrated by Bhishma to the Pancha Pandavargal in the presence of Krishna Paramatma. So this narration happened at the end of the Kurukshetra war in Mahabharatam, when Bhishma was actually lying on a bed of arrows, waiting for his own end, waiting for his own exit. So you can visualize this situation. So Yudhishthira, who was the eldest of the Pandavas and the son of Dharmaputra, is the son of Dharma, so Dharmaputra, a righteous man of spiritual inclination who represents all of us, all the spiritual seekers in all of us. So he poses a set of direct critical questions to Bhishma. I'd like to share a couple of questions there. Ko dharma sarva dharmanam bhavatah paramo mataha. So what is the greatest dharma in your opinion? Kim jaban muchyate jandur janma samsara bandhanat. So by doing the japa, of whom can jantus or creatures go beyond the bonds of samsara? So these two are very vital questions, as you can see, because this is pretty much what any serious spiritual aspirant wants to know. How do I cross this ocean of samsara, and what is the greatest dharma that I can do as a human being? So Bhishma actually replies with in an equally emphatic manner. So he says that Vishnu is the one and only greatest dharma, and he is the only dharma, and by daily chanting of Vishnu Sahasranamam with devotion, one can easily go beyond the bonds of samsara. So there is no ambiguity here. Daily chanting of Vishnu Sahasranamam with devotion will indeed allow us to cross this ocean of samsara. So Bhishma then goes on to narrate these 1,000 divine names, and the Pandavas are listening. At the end of the narration, something very interesting happens, and we get to know this incident only through Kanchi Mahaperiva. So at the end of the narration, Yudhishthira, the eldest of the Pancha Pandavagal, turns to Krishna. Yudhishthira seemed a bit nervous, so Krishna asked him, so what's the matter? You got to know the answer, right? So what's troubling you? And then Yudhishthira replied, but Krishna, we forgot to take notes. We didn't memorize because we were so engrossed in the narration that none of us managed to memorize it or take notes. So the namas will be lost once Bhishma exits. So Krishna smiles at them mischievously because Krishna has always been the ally and the all-powerful Paramatma. He's always been with the Pandavas throughout their journey. So here he is again to give them a solution. He says that Sahadeva is actually the only one who can retrieve the Nama for them. It is a very interesting choice because Sahadeva was the youngest of the Pandavas and he was a dark horse. He was the most intelligent of the Pandavas, but he was always forced to hide his light in a bushel, meaning his knowledge was always not revealed to other people for various reasons. We will not get into that today. So Krishna says Sahadeva is the only one who can retrieve the names because he was wearing a Shuddha Spatika Mala. So Krishna instructs Sahadeva to meditate on Lord Shiva And Sahadeva does that, and he retrieves the nama through the Shuddha Spatika Mala, and then Vyasa Maharishi writes it down and then passes it down for future generations. So that is how we received the Vishnu Sahasranamam, and this is especially important for this age of Kali, as we will see shortly. Okay, so now Nama Sankirtanam in Kali Yuga. So Nama Sankirtanam is basically divine chanting of the Lord's names with devotion. So that is Nama Sankirtanam, and in Kali Yuga, all our acharyas have repeatedly highlighted that this is the best and the easiest way to progress towards moksha or liberation. That is the easiest way to cross over this ocean of samsara. So it has been given as a panacea, like a cure-all for all the ailments of samsara, right? So this is pretty much the only panacea that, that you know that it works for sure. Because, yeah, we don't really know about all the medicines that are touted as panacea, right? So Nama Sankirtanam is super important and stressed by all the acharyas. And for various reasons, if you think about the 4 yugas, right? Satya Yuga, Dwapara, Treta, and Kali. We are right now in Kali Yuga, which is the darkest yuga in terms of morality. So in Kali Yuga, human intelligence and mind is very slow, manda buddhi nammalku ellarkum. And also lifespan is very, very short. The maximum is 120, but on average it's about 70, 80, and who knows, it's predicted that it will go down in Bhagavatam as the Kali Yuga progresses. So people don't have time to do like very strict austerities, meditation, or yajna, or sacrifices, or various other rituals. We don't have the concentration or the time to do all this. So for various good reasons, acharyas have stressed the importance of Nama Sankirtanam, divine chanting of the Lord's names with devotion. Even in Bhaja Govindam, Adi Shankaracharya says, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam, Bhaja Mudamate, Samprapte Sannihite Kale, Nahi Rakshati Dukrin Karane. So basically he says, oh fool, please sing the name of Govinda, because when the time of exit or death comes, any secular knowledge will not save you. So secular knowledge means material knowledge. Basically, whatever degrees that we collect in this lifetime, they're all pretty much useless at the end. Yeah, it's frightening to know that. But once you know that, then you can be breathe a sigh of relief, right? That it's fairly easy that once we chant the name of the Lord, then we can get across the ocean of samsara. So when the time of exit comes from this physical body, we always need to remember that we need to chant the name of the Lord. So Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudamate, Samprapte Sannihite Kale, Nahi Rakshati Dukrin Karane. Very famous lines. And in Bhagavad Gita, it's a very famous sloka. Chapter 8, verse 5. Antakale cha mam eva smaran muktva kalevaram yaf prayati samadbhavam yati nastyatra samshayah. So this actually, Krishna Paramatma tells Arjuna, he gives explicit guarantee that if one leaves this body at the time of exit, if one leaves this shariram, remembering the name of the Lord, then he will definitely attain the Paramatma. So that is moksha or liberation. So such an explicit guarantee has been given by Krishna Paramatma in the Bhagavad Gita. So it behooves us to be well prepared for the end. The interesting thing is only problem, nobody really knows when that end will be, so we need to prepare for it diligently every day by making this a daily routine, right? Like at least 1 or 2 hours every day, Nama Sankirtanam with devotion. It can be any of your favorite gods, right? Because there's only one Paramatma who has taken many forms for us, many manifestations. So Nama Sankirtanam, Adi Shankaracharya has stressed on that. The Bhagavad Gita says that at the final hour you need to remember the name of the Lord. So it is super important in Kali Yuga. So that is the final exam. Always remember that, because we take a lot of tests and exams throughout our lives, but this is really the only exam that matters if you are a spiritual aspirant or a mumukshu. That is the exam that we need to prepare for every single day in our life. Okay. So Vishnu Sahasranamam, right? Namba edukku artham therinjikano, right? So that is the title of the discourse, Vishnu Sahasranamam, meaning with explanation, where we'll be looking at some of the verses with the meaning. Edukku artham therinjikano. This is a fairly interesting question, right? I used to chant the Vishnu Sahasranamam a few years back without knowing the meaning, and then I started to study the meaning about last year. And then I realized it made a huge difference. It's basically because the mind and the intellect, nama manam and buddhi, they are actually wandering freely, right? Even when our body, that is our mouth and the vocal cord, are involved in chanting the Lord's names. So all of you would have experienced this. It's fairly easy to explain that, right? The mind will be having various emotions, and the intellect will be having various thoughts, even while we are chanting the divine nama. So we need to give something for the mind and the intellect to focus on. And what better thing to focus on than the meaning of the divine nama? In Deivathin Kural, which is Kanchi Mahaperiva's words, Kanchi Mahaperiva has said that the three major steps for man to progress towards moksha are karma, bhakti, jnanam. We will not be talking about karma today, which is basically selfless action in society, renouncing the fruits, but we will not be touching upon that today. So bhakti and jnanam. So chanting Vishnu Sahasranam every day by understanding the meaning as well will enable one to combine bhakti and jnanam, and hence follow the footsteps of Kanchi Mahaperiva. Because even in Bhagavad Gita, if you look at chapter 14, when Krishna Paramatma tells Arjuna the qualities of a true devotee, it's surprising. All the qualities are actually attributes of a jnani. So a jnani is someone who does atma vicharam and follows the path of knowledge to attain godhood. So all the qualities of a jnani are actually prescribed as well for a true devotee. So bhakti and jnanam are not really different. They go hand in hand, and we need to combine them in the right proportion, right? Depending upon each person, it will vary for each individual. Basically, bhakti involves our mind, where we express our deep emotions and love towards God, and intelligence, jnanam, is deployed by our intelligence, where we do atma vicharam and question, who am I? Where did I come from? Where do I need to go? How do I attain perfection, right? Self-realization. All this is jnanam, and that is a work of the intellect. Whereas bhakti is more done by the mind, where we give our feelings and love and towards the Lord. So combining in bhakti and jnanam is the key when we understand the meaning. And finally, it also enables one to develop an intimate bonding with the nama. And by developing a bonding with the nama, we are actually connecting with the Lord, because the nama is identical with the Lord. It's not different from the Lord. So that's very important to know. So hopefully that introduction was useful. And let us now actually get into some of the verses of Vishnu Sahasranamam and have a look at the meaning. So wherever it is relevant, I will also quote some slokas from the Bhagavad Gita to help us better understand the meaning of the verses in Vishnu Sahasranamam. The choice is pertinent here because Adi Shankaracharya in Bhaja Govindam has actually stressed upon Vishnu Sahasranamam and Bhagavad Gita, right? Everyday chanting of Vishnu Sahasranamam and Bhagavad Gita to progress towards moksha. So that is why a lot of people combine these two, commentators combine these two when they give the explanation. So let us now dive into the Vishnu Sahasranamam verses one by one. The first verse. Om Vishvam Vishnur Vashatkaro Bhuta Bhavya Bhavat Prabhu Bhuta Krit Bhuta Pradbhavo Bhutatma Bhuta Bhavanaha. Vishwam, the universe, he whose manifestation is the entire universe of forms. So he who has created and entered into the entire universe as the all-pervading reality. So that's Vishwam. That's a great start, right? Vishnuhu, that which pervades everywhere is Vishnuhu. So he is everywhere. So he's not restricted by time, space, or vastu. So any objects that we can think of in the outside world is either restricted by time, space, or vastu, that is object. But Vishnu pervades everything, is all-pervading reality. The Ishavasya Upanishad actually says that Ishavasyam idam sarvam. So which means all this is indwelt, pervaded by the Lord. So Vishnu means something that is all-pervading. Vashatkaraha. So in the ritualistic portion of the Vedas, where they prescribe sacrifices, there are a lot of mantras ending with Vashat, and they are used to pour the oblations into the Agni. Yajnas, right, when we pour oblations into the Agni, they are actually food for the Devas. So they are meant to appease the Devas, who in turn give us rain and other things. So Devas meaning Indran, Agni, etc. But ultimately, if you think about who is the receiver of these yajnas. It is Krishna Paramatma. Again, in the Gita, he says in chapter 5, verse 28, Bhoktaram yajna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhurdam sarvabhuthanam nyatva mam shanti mrichyati. So Krishna says that he is the enjoyer, the ultimate receiver of all the sacrifices and yajnas, and he is the master of all the worlds, including he is also the god of the demigods of the devas, right? So that's why he says, Bhoktaram yajna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhurdam sarvabhuthanam nyatva mam shanti mrichyati. So he is the well-wisher for all the beings, and knowing him one attains peace. So peace from what? Peace from the imperfections of matter. So we are all under the control of matter, right? Body, mind, and intellect. All that is part of the Maya matter. So we are all slaves to that, under the thraldom of matter. So knowing him, we will look into that in detail later on. So that is why he says, knowing me, one attains peace. Bhuta bhavya bhavad prabhuhu. This is one of the most interesting terms, names in Vishnu Sahasranamam. This is especially interesting for those on the Jnana Margam, right? Atma Vicharam path. Bhuta Bhavya Bhavat Prabhu means is Paramatma is Lord of the past, the future, and the present. So he's basically the Lord of time. Time is a subject of so many science fiction, and it is also a topic of great discussion amongst spiritual seekers, right? Because we are all subject to time. Everything we do in this mortal body is subject to time. And especially in the last 10 years, we've seen that time is so vital, right? So here Krishna says that he is the, Vishnu is the Lord of time. Bhuta Bhavya Bhavat Prabhuhu. So he's not conditioned by time. So Vishnu is someone who remains constant in the past, present, and future. So because truth is something that is constant, it doesn't change. It is eternal and immutable. So time does not condition him. So if you think about it, time, how is that registered in us, right? Time is the interval between experiences that we have. Experiences are registered as thoughts, and thoughts are ever changing. So it's basically the knower of these changes, who is the Paramatma inside each one of us. The knower of the change must be something other than the change, because he's not conditioned by time, he's not influenced by these changes. So he doesn't change. Only the body, mind, intellect apparatus changes, and the body, mind, intellect apparatus receives all the experiences in the outside world, and we experience them as changes only because of the passage of time. Whereas the Paramatma inside us is actually the illuminator of all these changes, but he doesn't change. So he's not conditioned by time, and he's constant. So that's why he's called the Lord of time. Again, in Bhagavad Gita, there's a supporting sloka for that. Chapter 11, verse 32. Kalosmi lokakshayakrit pravriddaha lokan samahar tumiha pravrittaha ritepi tvam na bhavishyanti sarve evastitaha pratyanikeshu yodaha. So this is a very, very interesting sloka where Krishna actually urges Arjuna to fight. And when Arjuna says no, Krishna says, I am time. I've come here to engage all men and destroy all the worlds. So even if you do not participate in this war, the entire army in the opposite camp and in your camp, except the Pandavas, they are going to be killed anyway by time. So he gives this, a great direct explanation to Arjuna that he is time. So what does he mean by that, right? So he is time. So time is a great tool that is employed by Krishna Paramatma in his Mahamaya, so that he can engage in this sport of creation, preservation, and destruction. So that is his divine Leela, the sport. The world is just a sport, the creation, preservation, and destruction, right? So, and time is the primary tool that he employs to deploy his Mahamaya. Because that is how we are subject to karma, and we experience changes only because of time. So that's why he says, I am time, kalosmi. If you look at it from a scientific point of view, right? So because that's a lot of people question things in our heritage, saying, but science doesn't say anything about it. So someone who's considered the greatest scientific mind, at least in the European world, Albert Einstein, when he was about to die, he said this famous statement, the distinction between the past, the present, and the future is a stubbornly persistent illusion. So digest those words carefully. The distinction between the past, present, and the future is a stubbornly persistent illusion. So of course he used the word illusion because he probably, I'm not sure if he studied Vedanta and knew the term Maya. So illusion is just a loose word for Maya. Maya is much more complicated than that. So he basically, after all his years of wonderful research, he said that time is an illusion. And yeah, it's what it is. So you can see that a little bit of science can be harmful, but a lot of science, deep science, especially theoretical physics, will again get you into Bhagavad Gita and into Vedantam and into our heritage. There are a lot of famous scientists around the world who have come to Indian Vedanta for answers to deep scientific theoretical problems in science. This is just one example. So Bhuta Bhavya Bhavat Prabhuhu, so when you chant that nama, think about time and how the Atman, Vishnu, is unconditioned by time. Bhutakrit. So Bhutakrit is the creator of all the creatures. So, so in layman terms, we might think Vishnu is the preserver, right? But in reality, there is only one Paramatma, one Parabrahman that is actually manifesting in different forms as the creator, preserver, and the destroyer. So depending upon the type of guna that they are operating in. So functioning through Rajogunam, he becomes the creator. Through Sattva Gunam, he becomes the sustainer. And then through Tamo Gunam, he becomes the destroyer. So Bhutakrit in this case is the creator. Bhutabrit. So here he is the nurturer and the nourisher of living creatures. In Gita chapter 15, there is an elaborate sloka, I won't go into that, but he says that he is the light, Krishna Paramatma, is the light in the sun, fertility in the earth, and growth in the plants and nourishment in food. So this is how Vishnu nourishes us, and Krishna has said that in the Bhagavad Gita. So Bhutabrit is one who nourishes us. Bhavaha, one who becomes. Bhavati iti bhavaha. He becomes himself into all these movable and immovable objects that you see around the universe. So because we saw in the first term, Vishwam, he becomes the universe. So Bhavaha is one who becomes. Bhutatma. Bhutatma is a very, very special term. It's very important to understand that. So I'll spend some time on that. He is the Atman in all the beings. Humans, animals, anything. So he is the very being in all of us, right? And it is in Devatan Kural, Kanchi Mahapariva says this very, very beautifully. He says, Irkardu ore ore Atmadam. So only for our practical conversation we say, number Jivatma, Paramatma. But in reality, there is only one Atma. So you can call him Paramatma. You can call him Parabrahman, Brahman, Atma. But there is only one infinite reality, and that is Bhutatma. So he is the Atma in all of us. And in Kathopanishad, it is said, he is the one enchanting truth that revels in every form, manifesting in plurality. So the one enchanting truth, right? So irkardu ore or Atma da, aduthan tan maaye shaktinal ittanai madiyum thondrugirathu. So this is what Mahaprabhu says in Devatan Kural. Actually, it's saying those are the exact words. Ore Paramatma da vesham potundu ittanai madiyum thondrugirathu. So all the souls, they actually is just one Atma. It's not like different. It is just a vesham or a role play that we are acting, right? And we shouldn't take the Vesham too seriously, right? Because we know there is only one Atma that is sporting, appearing as all of this plurality, and that is expressed by this term Bhutatma. And in Gita chapter 10, verse 20, this is corroborated by Krishna when he says to Arjuna, right? Very, very clear, beautiful sloka. Aham Atma Gudakeshaha Sarvabhuta Shayastitaha Aham Adishcha Madhyamcha Bhutanam Anta Evacha. So this is so clear, right? He says, Aham Atma, I am your Atma, Arjuna. So I reside in the heart of all the beings. So this is as unambiguous and assertive as it can get. So I am the Atma in all the living beings. I am the beginning, the middle, and the end of all the beings. So this is a beautiful sloka if you want to mark that down. Chapter 10, verse 20. Aham Atma Gudakeshaha Sarva Bhuta Shayastitaha. Ahamadishcha madhyam cha bhutanam anta evacha. So Bhutatma is a very unique term. That's why I spent some time on this one. Bhuta bhavanaha, one who creates and multiplies the creatures. So we've already covered that one. So that's verse 1. So let's move on to verse 2 now. Bhutatma paramatma cha muktanam paramagatihi avyayah purusashakshi kshetrajño kshara evacha. So Bhutatma. Bhutatma is someone with an extremely pure essence. So the Atman, Vishnu, is beyond all the vasanas. So that's why he's pure. So that's the definition given by the commentators. He's beyond all vasanas, so he's pure. Vasanas are basically stored in the causal body, which is the, so we have, all of us have three bodies, Stula Shariram, Sukshma Shariram, Karana Shariram. So all the vasanas or Maya are stored in the Karana Shariram. And Maya is basically a combination of the three gunas, Sattva Gunam, Rajo Gunam, Tamo Gunam. So whatever activities or thoughts that we have, all of them actually register, or they are registered as vasanas, basically impressions. So they are stored in the causal body, and that is the very reason for transmigration, basically the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Because we are all under the control of Maya, and the Maya is actually stored in the causal body. It's very interesting, right? So that is the Karana Shariram. So the Atma, Vishnu, is completely free from these vasanas. So he's not influenced by Maya, even though he wields the power of Maya, because he needs to play this divine sport with us. But he is not influenced by Maya. So he's beyond all the vasanas, and therefore he's described as Bhutatma, one with an extremely pure essence. So here the serious Mumukshu spiritual aspirant may raise a question. So he might ask, so how do I become Bhutatma? How do I become pure or free from the control of the vasanas, right? So again, all answers are registered in the Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 14, I will just give you the chapter and you can go into the slokas. So Krishna Paramatma actually describes how we can transcend the three gunas. So get beyond Sattva Gunam, Rajo Gunam, Tamo Gunam. And that is how we end the control of Maya over us. And then we can become pure. Basically, once you transcend the three gunas, gunatitaha, which is how he describes it, then we can also become free from the control of Maya, free from the vasanas, and therefore end transmigration. So that's in chapter 14, where he describes the true qualities of an advanced devotee, and that is also part of Jnana Vicharam. Paramatma. So Paramatma, we've also seen, is a supreme being, the Atman, the Brahman, Paramatma, the one infinite reality who is free from all the imperfections of matter. So you can call the Paramatma as Atman, Brahman, the infinite divine consciousness or awareness, or yeah. So however, there's so many words to describe it, but Paramatma is probably the most common phrase that we can use. Muktanam paramagatihi. So he is the final goal. Vishnu is the final goal for all the liberated souls. So let's think about goals for a while, right? So because we live in a very goal-oriented society. So all of us have different goals that we want to achieve. Maybe we want to earn a certain amount of money. We want to get married to a certain type of person, or we want to travel to some countries. We set so many goals. So there's nothing wrong with setting goals, but we need to understand the reality behind goals. Especially in the last like 2 or 3 decades, there's heavy focus on goal setting and achieving. So let's think about this for a while. Let's say you set a goal, and the two outcomes, right? Either, let's say you don't achieve that goal. So what happens? You develop a lot of anger and frustration, and maybe when you exit this body at the end, it's still an unfulfilled desire, and you carry that forward to your next life. You come back and you work on that goal, and you finish that, hopefully. So that's there. Otherwise, even in this lifetime, you have a lot of anger and frustration because you have not fulfilled that goal. Let's say you fulfill the goal, right? So you all are happy and cheerful, and you can post pictures on Facebook that you fulfill the goal. But the only issue with that is there are actually 3 issues with that once you fulfill the goal. You're never satisfied, right? Let's accept it. You're always greedy, and you set grander goals. And in the grander goal, you might fail in one of those goals, and we go back to step one. So it's like an algorithm. So you go back to step one then, where you don't fulfill one of the goals. And then what happens there? Because we are greedy, we set grander goals. And sometimes we are pushed into that by society, even if we don't want to do it. So after we achieve the goals, that's the first thing that can happen. The object that we achieved, right? The thing that we got after the goal. Maybe it wasn't really the thing we were after. It doesn't give us any joy anymore. This happens to a lot of people. Like maybe you've spent 10 years in studying something, and then you found out when you went for your first job that this field was completely not your preference, and you think you wasted 10 years studying this subject, and you just start on a completely new path. So that's just a very simple example, but I'm sure a lot of us have been in situations where we've achieved the goal, and then we found that the object of our achievement did not give us any joy. So it gives us, that's what they call disenchantment or disillusionment, right? The object wasn't as expected. It didn't give us any joy. And then the other reality is that even once you achieve this object, it's going to be taken away by external factors, and definitely by time. Because that's what we saw in the sloka where Krishna says, I am time, for I am come to destroy all the worlds. So any material thing that we achieve is definitely going to be taken away. That's the reality. It's going to be taken away by external forces or natural forces or by time. So it's not permanent. Any material goals that you set and achieve is not permanent. So I'm not saying you should not set and achieve material goals, but just know the reality of that. Then you can accept life much more easily. So that's about setting goals and achieving them in practical world. So what happens to evolved beings is that they go through thousands of lifetimes, repeat this cycle on and on. Then finally, in one lifetime, they realize that no, my final goal is actually moksha. So I want to attain the lotus feet of Vishnu, basically reach Paramatma, merge with Paramatma. So we get that is called a mumukshu. And we usually come to that state by the grace of a guru. So we need the grace of a guru. Either the guru can be in direct form or in a sukshma form. So that is how one gets to that point. And once you hit that point, there is just no going back. No one can convince you to turn back. It's just, it's very clear to you that you want to merge with, you want to join Paramatma. You want to join the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. So that's why he's called Muktanam Paramagatihi. And this is the final goal for all the liberated souls. Because once you achieve that goal, there is no going back. That is the final goal. It's the state of perfect bliss, perfect contentment, shanti. And this cannot be guaranteed by any other goal that you set and achieve. So in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 15, Krishna Paramatma tells Arjuna, Mamupetya punarjanma dukkhalayam ashashvatam napnuvanti mahatmanaha samsiddhim paramam gataha. So he says basically what we've talked about here, for evolved beings, after attaining me, there is no more rebirth because they have attained the highest perfection. So he gives a categorical assurance that having attained me, there is no more rebirth, and that is the final goal. And interestingly enough, this sloka says that the world is actually, he says two things about the world, Krishna, dukkhalayam and ashashvatam. So dukkhalayam means full of miseries. Yeah, I know, that's Krishna saying about the own world that he created, right? So dukkhalayam. And then ashashvatam, it's transient, temporary. That we can all understand. It's very, very temporary, especially in light of the events in last 2 years. A lot of people have questioned what's happening, and yeah, this is basically what's been given in the Bhagavad Gita about 5,000 years back. It's because Krishna knew that we were entering Kali Yuga and things are going to be very, very volatile. And so he's described the world as dukkhalayam and ashashvatam. So it's not permanent and it's full of miseries. So this is why bhakti and jnanam are so important, because we have clear proof as to what should be the final goal for a serious spiritual aspirant. So again in another sloka he says, Mamupetya tu kaunteya punarjanmana vidyate. So having attained me, there is no more rebirth. So that's in chapter 8, verse 16. So we see that Krishna actually repeats a lot of key points in the Bhagavad Gita. It's not because Arjuna was a fool. Arjuna is actually a very, very enlightened being, being the son of Indra himself, and he was a Deva. So it's not for Arjuna, it's actually for us, people in Kali Yuga, because he knows that we have manda buddhi and the points need to be drilled into our intellect. So he repeats this point and gives us categorical assurances that once you attain me, there is no more rebirth. So it's very, very important to understand this term, muktanam parama gatihi. So think about that whenever you set and achieve material goals. Avyayaha. Vyaya means destruction. Avyayaha means something which cannot be destroyed. So obviously Vishnu is someone who cannot be destroyed. Only material objects, finite objects can be destroyed, as we saw, either by time or by external factors or by other people. But the eternal, the immutable Vastu, which is Vishnu, Narayana Vastu, the Chaitanya Vastu, the infinite divine consciousness, it cannot be destroyed by anyone or anything. Avyayaha. Purushaha, one who dwells in the fourth city. So here, what is the fourth city? Here the rishis actually described our body, the physical body, as a fortress with 9 gateways, and the one who rules in it like a king is the Atman, who is Vishnu, sitting inside secretly in the cave of the heart. So Purushaha, one who dwells in the fourth city. Sakshi. So Sakshi is a very easy word to understand the meaning, but is actually very, very deep philosophically. Sakshi means witness. So Vishnu is actually as the Atman, sitting in each one of us as the neutral witness. So he's not affected by whatever our body, mind, or intellect goes through, because the body, mind, intellect apparatus, the BMI apparatus goes through a lot of things every day, worldly experiences, but the Atman is not affected by any of those changes. So that is why he's described as the Sakshi, the neutral witness. He's just watching, right? And the consciousness illuminates all these experiences for us as the neutral witness. Without the Sakshi inside, we will not be able to experience anything. But he is just the illuminator, and he is not affected by any of this. In chapter 9, verse 18 in the Gita, he says, Gatir Bharta Prabhu Sakshi Nivasa Sharanam Suhrita. So there he goes, Gatir Bharta Prabhu Sakshi. So there's a lot of terms here which you can see that Bhagavad Gita and Vishnu Sahasranamam, they are actually telling you the one and the same thing. Gatir Bharta Prabhu Sakshi. So even in the Gita, Krishna Paramatma says that he is a witness in each one of our hearts. And this is actually, some of the commentators have compared this to the sun so that we can understand it better. Because the sun in the sky illuminates everything, but the sun doesn't get affected by what it is illuminating, right? The sunlight can fall on Ganges, it can fall on muddy water, it can fall on drainage water, but the sun doesn't get affected, right? It is just watching as a neutral witness, and it is just illuminating everything in our daily lives. So some people compare that to the sun so that we can understand the Sakshi better. So you might ask a question here, right? So can I sense this presence of the Sakshi in my life, in my body? Actually, you can. It's very interesting, right? You can. All you need to do is spend some time alone. Let's say, I'll give you a very simple example, right? It's highly simplified, but it works. Let's say you're 35, 40, or 50 years old, or even 25, 30 years old, and you go back to your childhood home alone, or your school that you studied in, and then you're just walking in the playground, or your, the ancestral home where you grew up, and then there's something within you which knows that, oh, but I was just here as a small kid, right? This body was very small, and I was just playing around. And suddenly, the time seems to have shrunk to a single point, right? I mean, I'm sure all of us have experienced this at some point. Just go back to some place in your childhood. Preferably go there alone so that you can become more contemplative. So then you can sense this. So you start to think. So something within you, the awareness within you knows that you were here but the body was different. So this awareness clearly cannot be the body, right? That's very simple to eliminate. So I am not this body. Because the knower of the change must be something different from the change. The body has changed, so the knower of the change has to be something else, because it knows that this body has changed. So I'm not the body, you can eliminate that. So is the knower the mind? A lot of Western philosophy actually stops there. It's very superficial. They say the knower is the mind, but no, because the mind is even more fickle. At least the body changes only once every 1 year or 10 years, or the mind changes every second, every minute, especially if it's not controlled. Even when it's controlled through yoga practices, it changes every few minutes. So the mind is, and the knower, the awareness within you, knows about this change. Oh, the mind is sad, the mind is happy. No, the mind is agitated, the mind is jubilant. So all these things, right? The knower can know that. So the knower of the change has to be someone different from the change. The mind is constantly changing. So I am not, this awareness called I, right, is not the mind. So we've eliminated the body, we've eliminated the mind. So let's go deeper. Is this awareness the intellect, the buddhi? If you think about that, the answer is no. Because let's say you were 15 years old, you knew very little things, right? The intellect knew very little things, it couldn't process. And then when you were 30 years old, the intellect advanced. And then when this body grows older, the intellect actually starts to deteriorate once again. In old age, the intellect completely vanishes. So the intellect is also changing. And the knower, but the awareness within you has been constant. It also knows that the intellect has changed. So the buddhi has also changed because we learn and unlearn new things, right? So now we've eliminated the body, mind, and the intellect. So I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am not the intellect. So who am I? Who is this Sakshi? Who is this awareness which is always saying I? It is always constant, it is immutable and eternal. Right, so that's the beauty. This is roughly the path of Atma Vicharam. This is a famous person who did that in the recent history is Ramana Maharishi. I will not go too much into this now, but this is how you can experience this, how the Sakshi operates within each one of us. And this is a huge part of Jnanam that I promised at the beginning, right? We are combining Bhakti with Jnanam. So while we are chanting Vishnu Sahasranama, when we say these Nama, we are both devoted to the Lord, and then by understanding the meaning, we are also employing our intellect to pursue Jnanam simultaneously. So combining Bhakti with Jnanam towards moksha. So that's the Sakshi part. The Sakshi is just the neutral witness, the awareness, which is constant, the pure awareness, the infinite divine consciousness, the Atman, the illuminator, however you want to call it, in whatever language, it's the same thing. It remains the same. It keeps saying I. It's eternal and immutable, doesn't change, it's constant. And all of us can sense that at some point, but the problem is we are not able to hold on to that I inside us, because the power of Maya, the three gunas, as I described before, is so strong, especially in Kali Yuga, that we immediately come back into this body, mind, intellect sort of ego, right? We immediately attach ourselves. The ego in us pushes us to be identified with the body, mind, intellect, that we are not able to hold on to that Sakshi, the Atman inside us. Very few jnanis succeed in that. But if you can do that, it's great. It's accessible to anyone. You don't have to be born in a specific lineage or country or place. If with the grace of God and Guru, anyone can do this Atma Vicharam and see that you are indeed that Atman. The I is the Atman. It is not the body, it is not the mind, it is not the intellect. So that's Sakshi, the neutral witness. Kshetrajnaha. Kshetrajnaha is actually one who knows the body. Again, related to the last term, Kshetrajnaha is someone who is aware of this body, and the Atman, Vishnu, is the only one who is a Kshetrajna inside each one of us. In chapter 13, verse 3 in the Gita, he says, Krishna says, Kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata kshetra kshetrajnayo jnanam yattat jnanam matam mama. So he says, I am the Kshetrajna. So Krishna is saying to Arjuna, I am the Kshetrajna in all the fields, right? So he's saying, I am the knower in each of you. And the distinction between the body and the knower in the body is, in my opinion, the key knowledge and the only knowledge that matters. This is what Krishna is saying. I'm not saying that. Krishna is saying that. Kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi. So he is the Kshetrajna in each one of us. So you can clearly see now how Vishnu Sahasranama and Bhagavad Gita are actually related to each other. So whether we worship Rama or Krishna, the Paramatma is the one infinite reality and taking on different forms. We can worship the Paramatma in any form that we choose. That's the freedom or the latitude we have in Sanatana Dharma, and that's the greatness of Sanatana Dharma. So Kshetrajnah. Aksharaha. So we've already seen that it's indestructible. It cannot be destroyed. The Vishnu, Atman, Brahman cannot be destroyed by anything. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 23, Krishna says, Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, na chainam kledayantyapo, na shoshayati marutaha. So he tells us that the Atman cannot be burned by fire, weapons cannot cut it, wind cannot dry it, and water cannot wet it. So no substance can damage it. So it cannot be killed also. So that's why it's indestructible, aksharaha. So let's now move on to verse 3. Yogo yoga vidam neta pradhana purusheshwaraha narasimha vabu shriman kesavav purushottamaha. So yoga, so one who is to be known through yoga. So this is not the physical yoga that we are talking about, although that is useful step. Yoga actually means merging with God. So it is detaching ourselves from our identity with the body, mind, intellect, and attaching ourselves with the Atman, Vishnu inside us. So that's the real yoga. Yoga Vidam Neta means one who is the leader of all the men who follow yoga. So Vishnu is indeed the leader of all the yogis. Narasimha Vabuhu. So here we are talking about the Narasimha Avataram. Right? So the Vishnu Sahasranam is great in a way that the different namas, as we get into it, right? All the avatarams will come out. All the Dashavasaram at least will come out through the nama. So Narasimha Vabuhu. So one whose form is half human and half lion. So this is the famous Narasimha Avataram. Shriman, one who is always with Mother Shri. So one who is, so if you worship Vishnu, you can also have material wealth. So there's nothing wrong with that. So because Mother Shri is always there when Vishnu is there. Keshavaha, one who has beautiful locks of hair. So this again, when Krishna was a little child, he's supposed to have beautiful hair, and Mother Yashoda took great delight in decorating that. So Keshavaha. Purushottamaha, the supreme person, the supreme Purushaha. So I think we'll now get into, so I've covered 3 verses, so hopefully it gave you a taste for how we can combine bhakti with jnanam. I spent more time on some terms because there was just a more philosophical explanation behind that. So we could learn, develop our jnana more from some of the nama. So this is just a small sample, and each of you can actually go into the nama yourselves and learn about that. This will actually help us to focus our mind and intellect better when we chant the Vishnu Sahasranamam. So daily chanting is very, very important, nama sankirtanam. And understanding the meaning over time slowly will actually help us to combine bhakti with jnanam. So in Adi Shankara actually in Bhaja Govindam says, Hiya samsare bahudustare kripaya apare pahi murare. And Thiruvalluvar actually in Thirukural also says, Piravi Perungadal Ninduor Nindar Irevanadi Seradar Patruga Patratran Patrinai Appatrai Patruga Patru Vidarku. So either if we follow Adi Shankara's works in Sanskrit or Thiruvalluvar's work in Tamil, we get to the same conclusion. This is the beauty of Sanatana Dharma, right? We can follow so many different paths, we get to the same conclusion. So what they're saying is basically this ocean of samsara is very, very difficult to cross, and only by the compassion of the Lord, only by tying ourselves to the lotus feet of God, we can cross this ocean of samsara. And the Kural Patruga Patratran Patrinai, Appatrai Patruga Patru Vidarku basically says we must be attached only to God, and we must leave our attachment to worldly things. So this is basically what the Kural is saying. And so how do we do that? By Nama Sankirtanam, as we saw earlier. Nama Sankirtanam is the best way. And then someone might ask, so what about people who cannot understand the Bhagavad Gita, who cannot chant Vishnu Sahasranamam? So what do they do, right? What is the remedy for that? You said it's a panacea, so it must be a medicine for everyone, for all the ailments of samsara. But this seems very difficult to chant, Vishnu Sahasranam, Bhagavad Gita. So luckily, Shiva and Lord Shiva has actually given the solution to us, to Parvati Devi, because they knew that this is going to happen in Kali Yuga. So the sloka for that is Shri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Dattulyam Rama Nama Varanane Shri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Dattulyam Rama Nama Varanane Shri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Dattulyam Rama Nama Varanane. So here, Lord Shiva is actually telling us the immense power of the Rama Nama. So saying Rama, Rama, Rama 3 times with devotion is equivalent to chanting the entire 1,000 names of Lord Vishnu. So such is the power of this Rama Nama. And the Rama Nama, and if you say this above sloka near the Kodimaram in temples or near Goshala, it can give you multiplied positive effects. So that's something to remember, right? So whenever the next time you visit a temple or Goshala, you can just chant this sloka, which is fairly easy to remember or memorize. But what about people who cannot even say this sloka? So just say Rama, Rama, Rama with devotion, and you can cross the ocean of samsara, right? So this is Rama Nama is actually touted as the Taraka Mantram. The Taraka is something that enables you to cross over the ocean of samsara. Piravi Pirangadal. Here samsare bahudustare. So all our acharyas have described this, this transmigration cycle, the birth, death, rebirth. This ocean of samsara is very, very difficult to cross. It's not easy unless you have the grace of Guru and God. So Rama Nama is the only Taraka Mantram which can save us from this ocean of samsara. So it's very easy. Just chant Rama, Rama, Rama and be filled with bliss and anandam. And finally, I want to conclude with something very interesting, because we as a society in Sanatana Dharma, we take great delight in worshipping that one infinite reality in many different Nama Rupangal, many different names and forms. So I would like to conclude by sharing something which Kanchi Mahapariva has shared with us, narrated to us. So Rama, Rama, Raman, Sonna, who will be there, right? With devotion, if you chant Rama, 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 you know that Hanumanji will be right there, right, with us. And Hanumanji is an avatar, Hamsam of Lord Shiva. So Shiva Peruman will be there. And then Parvati Devi will follow Shiva Peruman. So if mother and father are there, of course the kids will come, right? So Murugan and Pillayar will also be there. So if the entire Shiva Kudumam is there, that is supreme auspiciousness, and Mahalakshmi will be there, because Mangalam, auspiciousness. And when Mahalakshmi is there, of course Lord Vishnu will be there, because we saw Shriman, right? So with all these people, all these gods with us, right? It's just one Paramatma, but they're all sporting as different manifestations. So with all of them around, will there be any worries? No, absolutely none. There will be bliss and anandam all around. So ellaru Rama Namam sollinde anandama irpom, sandoshama irpom, and let us all strive to attain the lotus feet of God by chanting the Rama Nama, which is the Taraka Mantram. Jai Shri Ram. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnam Adhaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you.